Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child.
Welcome to another installment of Popcornween. Oh, God, I have to talk about Dream Child. Oh, I don't want to talk about Dream Child. Dream Child. Oh, God, this movie. This movie was an absolute disappointment to everyone. It's got a Metacritic rating of 54%. It's got a Rotten Tomatoes of 31%. It's got an IMDb rating of 5. It was a movie that should have been great, but it was just mid for a myriad of reasons. All you have to really do is take a look at some of the promos that got cut for this. Robert Englund did several of these little promos that never saw the light of day, but they resurfaced later.
Ha! How do you like my pram, huh? This is where I practice my death rattle. Go, 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 go! Why do I wear the razor-sharp glove? It should be obvious by now. I have a clause in my contract. Robert Englund! Bobby Englund! What do I think of that wimp? That loser? That Screen Actors Guild peanut? He's lucky to be alive.
They're so freaking bad, they're good. But that's to start. And then the script was a conglomerate of 5 different kind of scripts that were put together. It didn't know where it wanted to go. It was a Freddy movie with kills that could have been good, but they weren't because the MPAA had real issues with some of them, and so they had to cut it down in the scrap room. Or in the editing room, and they scrapped it. You could see in some of the scenes that the kills were awesome. Like Dan, aka Eli Manning, is the first one to die in the movie, and there's this scene that never made it to the screen because of the MPAA, where he was on a motorcycle, and that's in the movie, but it's a very short, weird, kind of close-up shot of different stuff. If you watch the actual one that happened, like that motorcycle invades his body and like morphs him into this grotesque thing, and they had to cut it out, so that was left on the cutting room floor. There's an uncut version of several of the Nightmare on Elm Streets, but there's not for Dream Child, and the reason for that is because, from what I understand, the proofs of the uncut scenes got degraded or something like that. They were on a laser disc, which is how we have it on YouTube. You can search YouTube and find it. That's the only place it existed. And so some people pulled it off the laser disc and put it on YouTube, and it's pretty good. The motorcycle death scene is great. There is a person, Greta died from overeating because she was a model and she had bulimia and all this stuff. And so Freddy, he fed her too much, and she ended up choking at the table. Now, in the theatrical release, he just was feeding her food. But in the uncut release, he was literally feeding her own stomach, which was awesome. But you never got to see that. No, the theatrical release, because the MPAA didn't like it, they kind of blocked out the stomach part, and they cut that part of the scene. That really hurt the movie. The script direction hurt the movie, and just some of the campy stuff they did. The basic premise of this movie is we start off the movie, the opening credits scene is Eli Manning and Alice getting slap freaky, and which is always good. Score, win. And she goes, takes a shower, gets sucked into the dream world, but she's not asleep. And so it goes over and over and over, explaining to you that she's not actually asleep. She's not actually asleep. Why am I dreaming when I'm not actually asleep? Why is he able to get to my friends when I'm asleep? Why am I asleep? And it just says it over and over. And that's part of the problem with this movie. This movie treats you like you're stupid. The movie treats you like you're stupid to not be able to tell whether she's in a dream or not, to not be able to tell whether she's pregnant or not. They just keep telling you over and over and over, she's pregnant, she's pregnant, she's pregnant, she's pregnant. Then the kid shows up, and the kid from Meet the Robinsons shows up, and he is named Jacob, and he is her son, and he's her son. Even though everybody had already figured it out, we know he's her son because they told us like 5 different times. So it turns out the son is dreaming in the womb, and Freddy's kind of trying to hang out with him and get him involved because she's not dreaming anymore. She chose to not dream, which means Freddy can't have souls. And so he starts using the kid to pull her into his dreams, and then he in turn gets access to all of her friends. So Dan's the first one to die. Like I was saying, the theatrical release, death wasn't that big of a deal, but if you watch the uncut version, it's actually pretty good. So Dan dies because she has this kind of waking dream of Freddy, and she tells him that Freddy's back, which was actually a cool scene. Freddy is a baby, and he's birthed out onto the floor, and then all of a sudden they're in the church, and then his little weird corpse after the scene, because you learn something about Freddy in every single movie, right? And in this movie, we learned how he was born, who his dad was, all of that stuff. And so she had this dream sequence where she birthed Freddy, and Freddy came out of her, and then the next thing, they're in the church where they had the final battle in the previous movie, Dream Masters, and Freddy crawls as a weird little zygote, weird baby thing, crawls up into the Freddy clothes that were left on the floor in the church that they were in the final scene of the previous movie, and then he grows into Freddy, which is kind of cool because the ground starts breaking and it lifts up into the air, and then when you see Freddy put on the glove and he rises up in all of his Freddy glory with the light behind him, and for some reason he has this super long weird arm and nobody really knows why, and it was just it was a campy scene with the little zygote baby, but the reintroduction of him being there was cool. The only problem with that is that Freddy gets cucked in the entire fucking movie. See, why did Alice live through the second movie? That's the big question, right? Freddy is constantly getting his ass handed to him by her because he can't kill her. He can't harm her, which was a great mistake. They should have killed Alice off, but they didn't. So what he does is he uses Alice and the kid to go after her friends. So he got Dan. Then he goes and he gets Greta with the overeating scene. And then after he's done with that, he goes after a guy by the name of Mark. Now, Mark is a cool character. Nobody liked Mark's death scene except for me. Everybody always thought that Mark's death scene was kind of lame. I thought it was awesome. It had everything you could possibly want. It had comic books. You had Comic Freddy. You had Freddy on a skateboard. You had Super Freddy. You had all of these different things that Freddy used to go after him. And then he turns around and Mark pulls out these guns of this comic book character that he's kind of been his alter ego. He's like, oh, if I'd have been that guy, he's more human than I am. And so he pulls that guy out in his dreams and just blows freaking Freddy away. And then he says some superhero line like this, blah, 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 blah. And then Freddy pops up, and it's one of the rare times where you actually see somebody other than Robert Englund playing Freddy. But it's the only time you see anybody other than Robert Englund acting as Freddy, like actually having lines and stuff like that. And so this gargantuan Freddy comes up. The entire scene is in black and white, except for this kid who drew the comics, and he's got color in him. And he walks up to him, and he's shooting him again. Pow, 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 pow. But now he's Super Freddy. And so he comes up, and he stabs him, and he slashes him. And the cool part about this is he's a 2D figure, and he gets shredded into paper, right? But I think what everybody had a problem with is that there wasn't enough gore. And again, I would blame the MPAA for this, because when at the end of that scene, when he gets slashed up, you see a bloody arm fall onto the pages in the real world. See, if I would have had it my way, I would have shown his dismembered body lying on the floor. But if you can't have Dan, aka Eli Manning, taken over by his motorcycle and watching all of the cables and stuff go into his legs and go up his body and split him apart, if you can't do that with the MPAA, you're definitely not going to be able to have his bloody corpse laying there. But the cool thing is the 2D image, once he slashed it, all of the color drained out and went onto the floor like it was blood. I loved it. I thought it was a great kill. I thought it was imaginative. And how many times do you get to see Freddy on a skateboard? Come on now. But anyway, Mark dies as she's in the dream world trying to find Freddy's mom, because again, Freddy gets cucked at every avenue in this movie. So Freddy's afraid of his mom. Freddy's kind of afraid of Alice. Alice gets him in a position to where she has there's this huge like baby carriage, and the baby carriage has knives on it in the front. She runs it and she pushes it into Freddy, and it sticks through his chest, and he falls into this pit of the 100 people who raped her mom, and they start ripping Freddy into pieces. Again, he was scared. He was ripped in pieces, and it's just a terrible look to have your antagonist, especially somebody as evil and awesome as Freddy, to just be scared of everyone and everything. After that happens, he comes back and he's talking to the son. Alice sees her son, and she runs into a door with him. Now, this is another cool part of the movie. They actually ripped off the sketch, the relativity sketch, where it's the stairs going in all different directions, up and down, and it's kind of a paradox of how the stairs are built. And it's just one of those optical illusions. It's probably the most famous optical illusion that's ever been made. And so the kid and Freddy are running up and down. Freddy's trying to get the kid. He won't come. Eli Manning shows up and he's like, "Hey, it's your dad." And she's like, "It's not your dad. Run away." And the kid, and so he's chasing him around. So she finds out that Freddy's inside her with the baby, and she needs to get him out. And so she starts pushing. She's going to birth Freddy again. That's how weird this movie is. So she's birthing Freddy, and she's pushing Freddy out. Well, Freddy starts coming out of her chest, out of her neck, and how she's not dying in the real world because she's actually asleep right now is beyond me, but let's put that aside. That doesn't make any sense. While she's doing this, one of her friends, who was a high diver, and she almost got killed, and there was a really cool scene where she has to, the diving board, she falls asleep in a hot tub, and she gets out of the hot tub and she goes to practice her diving and stuff like that. And then the diving board splits apart, and it starts to break, and she starts to fall. And as she's falling, she turns it into a dive to go into the pool. But Freddy changed the pool into an empty pool. And so she's going towards the ground, and she sees this little area of the puddle, and she splashes through that. Well, that takes her into the Arkham Asylum that's in the movie. And she falls into this big tube that has water in it. And Freddy comes in to kill her. Well, right about that time, here comes Alice. And of course, Alice is in there, and Freddy's about to kill his friend. He picks her up by the hair, and he's about to kill her, and she goes, "No!" And she finds a spare pool skimmer that's just kind of laying around, and she shoves it through Freddy's face, which is actually kind of cool. But she's a badass. Like, remember the last movie I said her character arc was awesome because she started out as this little mousy girl and she ended up having confidence at the end. Well, this movie, she has way too much confidence. Like, there's no fear. She's not scared of Freddy at all. She knows Freddy's not going to kill her. And it takes away a lot of the tension that you generally have when you don't know who's going to die and who's not. Nancy was so much better. I hate Alice. I can't stand Alice. So while she is in this dream with Freddy, that friend that she saved by shoving the pool skimmer through his mouth, that friend is looking for his mom in the real world in the insane asylum. So Freddy can't stop it because she's not asleep. She's not dreaming. So she breaks open a wall and she finds Freddy's mom, and Freddy's mom says, "Thank you." And then she floats into the ether and her clothes fall to the ground, and she was just bones, and now her bones disappeared somehow magically, turned to dust or whatever. And then she comes in, and Freddy's mom comes through the door as Alice is birthing Freddy. I know it sounds crazy. I know. It's a stupid movie. It could have been great, but it wasn't. And so she's birthing Freddy, and then the mom tells Jacob, the son, "Your mom's not going to be able to do this. You're going to have to save her." And which, again, is another cool part, because the kid from Meet the Robinsons turns around and he's got a Freddy face on, and he goes, "I'm bored with her. I want to play with you." And so Freddy's like, "Oh, really? Oh, I finally got the kid. I'm good to go. He can introduce me to all these other people because he's got that trait." And then, of course, the kid is just distracting him. So the mom, so the souls that, I forgot this part. The souls that Freddy was catching, her friend, Dan, Greta, Mark, were all inside of Freddy. So the boy, because he was being fed the souls in utero, I know, it's stupid. The souls are being fed in utero. Well, the kid released those souls. And so Freddy's standing there, and then all of a sudden these souls come out of his back and start going towards the mom, right? Not Alice, Freddy's mom. And so they start ripping out of his back. Now they look suspiciously like the three dream demons in the abomination that is Freddy's Dead, but we're going to get to that next time. But they do. They look suspiciously like that. And so they come out of his back and they drag him back to his mom, and his mom puts him back in her stomach. And then she starts backing out, and he's coming through, and his hands are... She's like, "No!" And she's... "Ah!" And that's how Freddy dies. And then she takes her baby and she puts Jacob back in her tummy. And then the next thing you know, Dan is born, and she's with her dad, who used to be an alcoholic but isn't anymore. And they're at a park, and they're just happily ever after. Oh, she had her baby. Alice had her baby. And then there's a kid jumping rope in a little white dress. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4. And that's how the freaking movie ends. It could have been a good movie. It was not a good movie. And the final thing that makes it not a good movie is this is the movie that put Freddy Krueger being a pedophile in canon. So there is a newspaper article as they're going through all of the Freddy's history in this research that Mark did. And her dad's like, "Alice, I need you downstairs real quick." And she goes, "Okay." And they made it a point for her to turn the page and slide a page over. And it says, "Child molester acquitted, citizens outraged." That is all of the reasons that this movie sucks. Should you see it? It's mid at best. It could have been so much better. but it wasn't. So Freddy's Dead's coming up next. Freddy's Dead was an absolute abomination. It was terrible. They changed the lore on everything. It was just an awful movie. This movie only made like $22 million because nobody liked it. Although it made money, New Line Cinema was very vocal about the fact that they were not impressed with it, that it fell below their expectations. The directors said that they, as all of the other movies, they had such a short time to make it, and that there were so many people making changes to it and putting their input that they can't even watch it themselves. It's a disappointing movie. It should have been good, and it wasn't. They wanted to throw that religious dogma back into it. There was actually one point at which he was like, this is what the Catholics say about it. And then he pulls down a book that says Christian mythology. It's just like, how many people are you going to slap in the face with this stupid movie? So, anyway, see it, don't see it. It's part of canon. It's underwhelming. The MPAA screwed it up. There's supposed to be a 4K version of the entire series coming out. Everybody's kind of hoping that there's going to be an uncut version of this movie because it'll make it a lot better. It's only 30 seconds of total video, but it'll make it a lot better. The movie sucks. It really does. It's the least memorable of all of them, to include the second super gay one, because it was memorable, because it was super gay. And everybody's like, why is this movie super gay? I hope you enjoyed Popcornween. I'll see you on the next one. Next one, God, I don't want to do either of these. God help me. God help me.
Told ya! Comic books was bad for ya!